You don't have to watch too many crime dramas to realise how very rarely witness statements match. What can be seen from one side of the street could look very different from the other. And the detail, oh, the devil is always in that. About 100 years after Jesus, one writer decided he would try to make one coherent story out of the 4 different gospel accounts. When he got to Easter, I think that must have been rather complicated. What happened when? Who was there? Why didn't all the gospel writers have the same material? Just exactly how long after events were these things written down? And perhaps most mysterious of all, why did nobody recognise Jesus from the start? One of the individual recollections appears only in Luke's Gospel. It's unusually short on detail, but here's how his grand finale begins as the news begins to break. Cleopas, he were with me. Jesus didn't pick him personally, he weren't one of the original 12 or anything, but he were loyal, part of the family might say. And like the rest of us, he was in shock. We'd only got to the holy city just a week ago, all that branch waving and singing. Who'd have thought our own rabbi would cause such a stir? But then it all went horribly wrong. Jesus had hinted things wouldn't turn out so well, but Peter, like he would, said he'd never let his worst predictions happen. Jesus told him to shut up, basically. Later on there was some talk of swords. Someone used one to clobber the high priest's servant in the garden, sliced his ear off. Jesus weren't too impressed with that either. We were outnumbered that Passover night. Temple guards ambushed us. Jesus, while he was praying, most of us were flaked out round the garden. He wasn't up for a fight, just handed himself over. Cut a long story short, Roman justice. Just, it ain't. Anything for a quiet life, that lot. Quick as that, Jesus were dead and buried. But then, after Shabbat behind closed doors, the women, they started it, visited the cemetery before first light they did, to make things right. Never mind the rules, and found his tomb empty. A couple of the lads they went to see. They were right, though nobody shared their hallucinations, hysterics, a lot of them. Cleopas, well, he were already going stir crazy, I reckon, wanted out of the city. Go and see his family, not far enough. Wasn't mad keen on the walk, but I thought it'd be safer with 2. So there we were, striding out towards Emmaus, mulling it over. Well, you would if you'd been through all that, he was saying. He couldn't get his head round it. If Jesus was God's son, well, clearly couldn't have been. We thought he was going to be the one, fix all Israel's problems. But who could have snatched his body? Why? What had they done with it? I can tell you there were quite Barney in the safe house, felt anything but safe. And the women, they were ticked off because we didn't believe them. Well, not totally, even after the lads checked it out. Anyway, there we are, busy arguing back and forth about, Mad Mary and the others. We didn't notice this chap sort of come up behind us. No one we knew. Fell into step, just listened a bit, companionable like. Looked harmless enough. Suddenly says, "So what's this you're talking about?" Stopped in our tracks. Must be the only person in the entire city hadn't heard. "Where you been, mate?" Cleopas asks him. "Under a rock or summit?" Bit embarrassing really later. I gave him the short version, right up to that morning and the grave robbing, or whatever. Blow me down if he didn't suddenly say how slow we were. I thought he meant our walking, but turned out he meant on the uptake. Blooming cheek! Felt like smacking him one for a second. But then he starts explaining. Walking scripture encyclopedia, knew it all inside out. Every text you can imagine about God's promised one, from Moses through the prophets, even the Psalms. We got the lot. He was despised and rejected. All that. He said our holy books were full of signposts that we pretty much missed the lot. It's funny how fast that journey passed. And after his first comment, it were a real help. Cleopas and me, we pretty much just listened. We were a bit sorry by the time we reached the town. We'd been walking for hours, but didn't seem it. Reckon he'd really relit our fires. It were getting dark. And he went to walk on, but we said, why not stay over? So he came in with us. We washed up, we rested a bit before dinner. I was starving. And then it happened. As we sat at the table, the stranger took up the bread, looked up to heaven and blessed it before breaking it to share it with us. I felt like I'd been smacked now. He did exactly what Jesus did that Thursday night. Cleopas hadn't been there, of course, but we'd repeated everything over that happened, over and over and over, like you do after a death. I thought, good grief, it's him. And I stared at him in the lamplight for what seemed like forever. Cleopas' mouth fell open as he went to take the bread. I knew he'd clocked him too. We looked at each other expecting, do this to remember me. And we turned back to Jesus. Whoa! Where was he? Gone. Nothing there but an empty plate and cup, the broken bread just lying there. We flung our coats on. We charged out the door. Good job I picked up some of the bread. It's hard to eat and run though, especially in the dark. Still had most of it in my hand when we got back. Now when I were a kid, folks teased me for being slow on the uptake and my feet. But me and Cleopas, we probably broke all records running back to the city. Perhaps it was the bread. He weren't nearly as outpuff as me, so he told the others, Jesus is back. And all they said was, yeah, Simon's seen him as well. I showed him my bread and I took another bite. In his well-known poem, Death is Nothing at All, Henry Scott Holland suggests that after death, everything will be exactly as it was before. And that is really what everyone wants. But in Jesus' case, that wasn't really how it was. He doesn't look exactly the same. He certainly doesn't act it, all that coming and going through locked doors and everything. And his closest friends, no, they don't immediately recognise him. Yet those same fearful, demoralised people are instantly transformed. And getting there, well, that I think will be more of a marathon than a sprint.